Hey guys, it's Justin back with an engineer's perspective. I've got a quick, not altogether interesting video today, but I just like to give kind of where my mind's at and kind of how I look at things every once in a while. So I just wanted to talk really quick about what makes a good backlock to me. I really like backlocks, especially ones that are done very excellently. What I like about a backlock is that it's ambidextrous. Usually they're strong enough. Like, I trust anybody's backlock more than I trust anybody's liner lock. That's a good way to phrase it, I think, because I've seen a lot of liner locks that have A, failed, or B, have really poor geometry. And if you are using them really hard, the lock will walk over and cause issues. So even a cheap backlock tends to not do that. So that's kind of why I like them. Ambidextrous, they're hard to like mess up really bad. Oh, and then a lot of people understand a backlock. You know, it's just kind of right in front of your face to do that. So non-knife people tend to get it. But that said, like, I don't enjoy the backlock on a Buck 110. And that's because it's way in the back and it's not very nice to disengage. So that's kind of what I want to talk about, is kind of what are the criteria I have for like a good backlock. And there's pretty much two things. Number one is it needs to be balanced enough so it's not overly stiff but not overly soft, that you can one-hand deploy. So just like that. So the Delica does that in spades. And part of that is kind of the relationship of your deployment method. So if there's a thumb stud, that, you know, the distance from the handle, or rather the pivot out, so the further out it is, kind of the more leverage you get on it. So case in point is that the Native, trying to be a lot more svelte, like that, doesn't have quite the leverage with its opening hole, and you can see it's slightly occluded there. So I actually didn't like the Native right away, because that balance of stiffness to softness of the spring and that hole being occluded and not getting good leverage made it a little bit hard to flick out on my Rex 45 one. So much so that I was like, I don't think I actually can do this knife. Like, it was just too much of a pain in the butt, but it broke in really great. So one hand deployment, that's relatively quick, because I don't even have to be able to flick it necessarily, though I like that. But even on the Rex 45, I felt like when I was deploying it like that, I was kind of almost like taking it out of my hand and gonna drop it initially. But this LC200N1, it came perfect. So easy one-handed deployment, not necessarily flickable, but easy one-handed deployment. So that's number one. And the second one is, wow, too bad I don't edit that out, right? What's more important to me than deployment is actually putting it away. So a lot of people are the opposite, but I don't like Kershaw's Spyderco. I don't like automatics, because personally, I take out a knife and I use it, but generally I'm still holding on to whatever it is, and I need to put my knife somewhere. And usually I like to be able to put it back in my pocket. You know, like if you're standing up in the middle of nowhere on top of like a crate or something, you just don't have a good spot to put it. You don't want it to fall like 20 feet down or into the grass where you're not gonna be able to find it, just things like that. Like, rarely do I ever want to or have the opportunity to just set it on the ground or a good surface. So being able to one hand close it easily is a big deal. And that's something that the Native series does in spades. And that's something that the Buck 110 does awful. But the two Native 5s I've got here, both of them came like this. Are you ready? 0 side to side, 0 up and down. Probably the best lockup of any knives that I own. You ready? Just gonna click that. Bloop. Just falls down. It's amazing. Like, just drop free action. So that right there is like the ideal backlock action the Spyderco, any Golden Colorado backlock is freaking sick. So now after I got these native 5s, I understood why people really liked the Manix 2 backlock and why they even bothered to make the Lil native and a backlock, because Golden Colorado backlocks are mind-blowing. They have such good lockup and their action is just ridiculous. And there's no liners in this at all. There's no washers or anything. That's directly on plastic. So there you go. Delica, this is the more common scenario. So it's got the mid backlock still, because if it's back here, you can't get good leverage, but I can get leverage on it. And then I just go like this, just flick. And see how it's got the ricasso right there? That stops it, and then I just finish it. That doesn't bother me at all. It's not as good as this, but flick, close. Alternatively, you know, you can assist it with your finger there if you've got a real stiff one, and then finish it. But for me, if I can't flick it over like that, then that's pretty annoying. And that's something that can be hit or miss. This Delica has a tiny bit of side to side and a little bit of up and down. When you've got a really thin, light blade like on the Delica, in order to get the side to side play out, it can get so stiff that in order to flick it over like that, you have to go like, yeah, like you're freaking karate chopping. And that's pretty excessive, especially when you're in an environment where people might be nearby. It's kind of aggressive and it's just a lot. And I don't like that. So I've dialed back this pivot a little bit, and I accept a little bit of side to side. That doesn't really bother me in this case, to get that flickable or half close flick action, you know, out of this. So that's something I can live with. But the Buck 110 is a knife that you can't one-handed deploy, even if you add like the thumb studs that I do have. So even if you add it on, you can't really one-hand deploy it very easily without it feeling like it's trying to fall out of your hands. And you certainly can't one-handed close it easy without getting ridiculously awkward. So that's kind of my criteria for an acceptable backlock. And I think really the native 5 is like the epitome of backlock, because you can flick it open easy. It's got as good a lockup as I think money can buy, and the close action, woo, so good. So the Delica is just, it's okay, it's fine, it's easy to use, but that's really something. So that's my video on kind of how I look at backlocks and what I look for in backlocks. So thank you for watching. Have a good one.